Alright guys, let me ask you something real quick. If you've never owned an Apple Watch before, and you were buying one today, which one would actually make sense? So after spending the last 3 months with the Apple Watch SE 3, I think I've got a pretty solid answer. This isn't one of those day one reviews where everything feels perfect because it's brand new. This is after real world usage, daily wear, sleep tracking, charging habits, notifications, workouts, all of it. And the more time I spent with the SE3, the more it started to feel like the Apple Watch Apple actually wants most people to buy. This watch is clearly made for beginners. It's also made for first-time Apple Watch users, parents, grandparents, kids, or anyone who just wants an Apple Watch that works without feeling overwhelming and without breaking the bank. You don't need to learn a bunch of features, you don't need to baby it, and you don't need to spend top tier money just to see if you even like wearing a smartwatch. And that's why, after 3 months, the SE3 doesn't feel like a budget Apple Watch. It feels like the right starting point. So in today's video, I'm going to break down the real pros and cons of the Apple Watch SE3, talk about who this watch is actually for, and by the end, let you know whether or not it gets a recommendation from me after living with it on the wrist for 3 months. Alright, so without further ado, let's roll the intro. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with a quick unboxing. So, if we lift up the top half of the box, we get a nice plum band. Wait, wasn't that discontinued a year ago? Anyway, wait, that's a Series 5. Also, that isn't even my hand. Hey, who is this?
Shit.
Okay, jokes aside, this is my editor, Stormy's Series 5. Stormy will occasionally be featured on the channel, so everyone, welcome Stormy aboard. Alright, let's start with the money side of things, because whether this is your first Apple Watch or a gift for someone else, price really matters. The Apple Watch SE3 starts at $249 USD for the GPS only model in the 40mm size. If you want to step up to the larger 44mm case, that'll run you $279. So you're looking at about a $30 difference depending on the size you choose. Now, if you want cellular, that's just an extra $50 on top of either size. And that cellular upgrade also brings 5G connectivity, which we'll dive into later on in the video. For a lot of people, that $50 upgrade makes the watch way more flexible, especially if you like leaving your phone behind sometimes. To put that into perspective, the Apple Watch Series 11 starts at $399, and if you want to add cellular on that model, Apple charges you another $100. So not only is the SE3 cheaper overall, but the jump from GPS to cellular is half the price compared to the Series 11, which is a big deal for first-time buyers. As for color options, Apple keeps things real simple on this line. The SE3 only comes in 2 finishes, Midnight and Starlight. There are no titanium variants of the SE3. So if you do want a titanium model, you're forced into the Series 11 lineup. So this line does not have a huge color lineup, but honestly, that also makes it an easier choice, especially if you're buying this as a gift. So you've got 2 sizes, 2 colors, a relatively small jump to cellular, and a price that stays well below the Series 11 line. Now, performance is one of those things you don't always notice when it's good, but you definitely notice when it's bad. And after using the Apple Watch SE3 for a few months, performance has never really been something I had to think about. That's because the SE3 runs on Apple's S10 chip, which is the same processor used in the Series 11 and the Ultra 3. So even though this is Apple's most affordable watch, it doesn't feel slow, cut down, or behind the times. Everything feels smooth. Swiping through menus, opening apps, responding to notifications, it all just works. In everyday usage, that smoothness matters more than people realize. If this is your first Apple Watch, you want something that feels instant and reliable, not something that makes you wonder if you should have spent more money. And in my experience, the SE3 keeps up just fine with day-to-day tasks. Another underrated upgrade here is on-device Siri. Because some requests are handled directly on the watch, Siri feels quicker and more dependable, even when your iPhone isn't right next to you. For beginners especially, that makes interacting with the watch feel more natural and less frustrating. So when it comes to performance and everyday use, the SE3 punches way above its price line. It feels fast, responsive, and modern, which is exactly what you want from a watch you might be wearing every single day. One of the other biggest upgrades on the Apple Watch SE3 is something people have been asking for on the SE line for a long time: an always on display. And once you use it, you immediately get why it matters. You can just glance down and see the time, your activity rings, or whatever complications you have set up without having to raise your wrist or tap the screen. It sounds simple, but it makes the watch feel way more natural and way less techy, especially if this is your first smartwatch. This is one of those features that really helps the SE3 feel less entry level. It closes a gap that used to exist between the SE and the regular series models, and for everyday use, it makes a bigger difference than you might expect. On top of that, the SE3 also gets gesture controls like double tap and wrist flick. So instead of always touching the screen, you can interact with the watch using simple movements to dismiss notifications or even phone calls. And this isn't something you'll use every single day, but when you need it, it's genuinely convenient. All of this adds up to a watch that feels easier to use, more intuitive, and more complete, especially for someone who's new to the Apple Watch and just wants things to work without thinking about it. Battery life is one of those things where I think it's best to just be straight up and honest. Listen, with the Apple Watch SE3, you're realistically looking at a charge every day kind of scenario. It'll get you through a full day without any issues, even with the always on display turned on, but it's not something you're gonna wear for 2 days straight without thinking about charging. Where that can matter is if you're really into sleep tracking. If you use your watch a lot throughout the day, notifications, workouts, the always on display, then you'll probably need to be intentional about charging it before bed to make sure it lasts through the night. For lighter users, it's usually fine, but heavier use can make sleep tracking a little less consistent unless you plan around it. That's where the Series 11 pulls ahead. The Series 11 often finishes the day with roughly 30 to 40% battery remaining, which is plenty to sleep with it on and still have battery left when you wake up. That extra headroom just makes things a lot easier. And if you're curious how this compares to the Ultra 3, that's in a whole different league on its own. The Ultra 3 can easily last 3 days, and depending on how you use it, you can sometimes push close to a 4th day. But again, that comes at a much higher price. The saving grace for the SE3 is fast charging. A quick 15-minute charge can give you about 8 hours of use, which makes it really easy to top off and keep moving without stressing over battery life too much. And when it comes to health and sleep tracking, the Apple Watch SE3 keeps things simple yet again, and that's honestly one of its biggest strengths. You still get the essentials: heart rate tracking, activity rings, automatic workout detection, everything you'd expect from an Apple Watch if this is your first one. It's also easy to understand, easy to check throughout the day, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. Sleep tracking is where the SE3 really steps things up. You now get a sleep score, which takes all your sleep data and turns it into something you can actually understand at a glance. Instead of trying to interpret a bunch of graphs, you get a clear snapshot of how well you slept, which makes it way more useful for everyday people. People like me who are number nerds, I love analyzing data and looking at graphs, but I understand most people are not like me. So in this sense, it makes it very intuitive and easy to use. On top of that, the SE3 also includes sleep apnea alerts, which adds an extra layer of peace of mind, especially for something you're wearing overnight. That's a pretty advanced feature to see on Apple's more affordable watch. There's also a skin temperature sensor built in, which supports more accurate cycle tracking and ovulation insights for women. Again, it's not something everyone will use, but for the people who need it, it's a meaningful addition. So while the SE3 doesn't have every advanced health feature Apple offers, it covers the stuff that matters the most for everyday use, and for most people, that's more than enough. And like I mentioned earlier, so we go from LTE now to true 5G, so if you do get the cellular option and your phone happens to die or you want to leave it behind, the 5G enables faster, more reliable speeds in terms of connectivity to the network. So whether you're making a phone call or you're sending a quick SMS or iMessage, on this watch, things just are more fluid and a lot more reliable, so that's another huge plus. Now, no watch is perfect, especially at this price, so let's talk about what you don't get with the Apple Watch SE3. The biggest missing feature here is an ECG, or sometimes it's called an EKG. If you're someone who wants electrocardiogram readings or has specific heart health concerns, that's still something Apple keeps exclusive to the series line and the Ultra models. And to be fair, ECG can be a genuinely important feature for some people. You also don't get the newest design language. As we talked about earlier, the SE3 looks closer to the older Series 4, 5, or 6 models, with thicker bezels and a smaller looking display compared to the Series 11. It works just fine, but visually it's not the most modern Apple Watch you can buy. And honestly, I feel like I'm nitpicking here. If you don't already know you need ECG or the latest design, you're probably not even going to miss them. So while there are compromises here, they're very intentional, and they're the reason the SE3 can exist at this price point in the first place. Alright, and now let's talk value, because this is where the Apple Watch SE3 really makes its case. At $249, the SE3 gives you the core Apple Watch experience without forcing you into the series line or ultra pricing. You get strong performance, an always-on display, solid health and sleep tracking, and a smooth day-to-day experience, all at a price point that makes sense for someone buying their first Apple Watch. What really seals it for me is how easy this watch is to recommend. If you're new to the Apple Watch, you don't need to spend $400 on a Series 11 just to try it out. The SE3 lets you get in, see how it fits your lifestyle, and only upgrade later if you actually feel like you're missing something. It's also one of the easiest Apple Watches to buy as a gift. The pricing is reasonable, the setup is simple, the features aren't overwhelming, and it works for a wide range of people: kids, parents, grandparents, and first-timers. There's very little risk here. The bottom line is, if you want the Apple Watch experience without overpaying, then the SE3 is the smartest value in Apple's lineup right now. So after using the Apple Watch SE3 for the past 3 months, here's my verdict. If this is your first Apple Watch, this is the one I recommend, for sure, hands down. It's fast, reliable, comfortable, and it covers everything most people actually use an Apple Watch for, without forcing you to overpay. Sure, if you want that 5G connectivity, you do have to pay up an extra $50 and also pay a line with your provider, but I would say it's worth it. This SE3 does not feel cheap, it does not feel outdated in day-to-day use, and it's easy to live with. If you're buying for a parent, grandparent, kid, or teenager, the SE3 also makes a lot of sense. It's durable, simple to use, and doesn't overwhelm with features. Add in the option for cellular and it becomes a really solid everyday safety and communication tool. Now, if you care deeply about having the latest design, the longest battery, which I understand is an important point, or features like ECG, then yeah, the Series 11 or Ultra might be the better fit. But for most people, those upgrades honestly aren't necessary. So for me, the Apple Watch SE3 absolutely gets a good recommendation. It's the smartest entry point into the Apple Watch lineup right now, and for a lot of people, it might be the only Apple Watch they ever need. So guys, that's been it. That's been my review on the SE3. This is considered Apple's budget-friendly Apple Watch. I think it's a terrific buy, especially at $250. Even with the 5G connectivity option, the extra $50 bump is definitely worth it in my opinion. But if you've ever owned an SE2 or if you're currently rocking an SE3 on your wrist, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And hey, if you're considering buying one, I really hope my video was useful. If you did learn something new or found this video useful, definitely drop a like down below. Consider subscribing, and that's been it for me. I'm looking forward to more amazing tech content coming up in 2026, but until then, take care, and I'll catch you all in the next one.